long, hard week for Sri Lanka, with violence overrunning peaceful protests, calls for absolute changes in leadership instigating the resignation of the Prime Minister. But what we cannot forget is that the country is mired in an economic crisis. The bottom line is, Sri Lanka has no money. On Cynical Life, let's talk today is President Partner of Heritage Partners, Attorney at Law Arittha Wikramanayake, who surmises that Sri Lanka is in an utter mess. Arittha, the protests have been going on for over 2 months. The Galle faced protests nearly 40 days. But somehow nothing seems to have happened when it comes to the governance arena. How bad of a mess are we in at the moment?
Look at the interview that is given by the governor of the central bank. Just look at his face. And if his face doesn't tell you the entire story, nothing will. For the governor of the central bank to make a public speech, an admission that he is helpless and that he will resign and go unless there is stability soon. He said 7 days, I think, right? That in itself says a lot. And if the people in this country, and that includes all of us, if we don't take that message and act on the message that was given by him yesterday, we are doomed, right? And there'll be no way that we'll get out of the situation that we are in.
What do you recommend as a solution?
We'll go down to the basics. We are faced with a huge economic crisis. As the governor said, in a couple of days we will not be able to import anything, right? This is a country which is dependent on imports. We need gas, we need medicines, we need food, right? And if we don't have foreign currency, the governor also said we don't have rupees, how are we going to provide the basics for people to live on? Okay, so what are we looking at? We need to go to the IMF, right? That now every party has accepted this. No matter whether you're extreme or otherwise, everybody has accepted they need to go to the IMF, right? To negotiate the IMF package, there are a couple of things you need. First is you need to formulate a policy. You can't just go to the IMF and say, give me money. That's not the way it happens. So when a country in a situation like ours goes to the IMF, they must have a plan on how the money is going to be used and how that money is going to be repaid. It's an extremely complex process. Your plan must include things like how you are going to cut down your deficit, how you are going to make repayments, how you are going to sustain yourself, and what does it involve. Every one of them happens to be very controversial subjects. You can just imagine the outcry that that's going to cause. So again, you need to build consensus, you need to have a plan, and you need to work it out. And that's going to take time, and that's going to need some degree of acceptable amongst the people, right? So without stability, you can't do that. Then the next is try to implement it, right? Every little measure that people take will be challenged by the people and by one or the other of the political parties, right? So we need credibility, we need to put in some sort of mechanism or put in some people who will be able to deal with this immediate challenge. And until you do that, we will get nowhere. And again, it's very, very urgent.
How can we bring in some kind of political stability?
No matter who takes this challenge on, they are going to be met with criticism. Right? You try to privatize Sri Lankan, for instance, or you try to shut down Sri Lankan, people are going to get on the streets. You try to address the problems in the electricity board, it's going to bring the unions out on the streets. Okay? If a politician tries to do that, right, it will never be accepted by a broader group of people in this country. Secondly, that politician will always be aware that his political future is doomed. You have to bring in independent people who will be acceptable to a fairly large group of people. Not the people in parliament. I don't think the people in parliament really matter. They must be acceptable to a greater segment of society, including, I must emphasize this, including the people on what I now call the street. Unless you can get people off the street, unless you can calm them down and tell them, give us breathing space to try to implement a plan and get them out of the protests, right? At least for a brief period of time, nothing is going to work out. Now, some people are talking about calling for elections in 3 months. Hang that idea, that's not going to work. Because if we try to have elections in 3 months, this IMF, whatever policy that you formulate now, will be the target of that election. Parties will be attacking the elements of that program. That's not a luxury that we can afford at the moment. So let's forget about elections for at least one year or perhaps 2 years, right? Let these interim administrators run the country for that period and leave at the end of it. Let's address the economic crisis first, and that is crucial.
So I just hope the powers that be will see the sensitivity of this whole thing and also be sensible about it and get on with it and give us back our country, really. Thank you so much, Arittha.
Thank you very much.
Keep us on your radar, subscribe and follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn.
We are here to better your lives and champion your every goal. With 12 billion rupees worth of customer benefits in 2020 and a life insurance fund worth over 100 billion rupees, our strength is your strength. You focus on your goals. We will take care of the risks. Srilanka Life.